Good morning, Bryte Church, and welcome to another devotional. Today I wanted to read one verse from Joel chapter 2, verse 12. Yet even now declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart and with fasting, weeping, and mourning. If I were to ask you to define fasting in the broadest possible terms, your response might be something. Fasting is the removal or the restriction of something for the desired effect that will result in the removal of that thing. Oftentimes, the effect for a believer is to feel something more acutely in relationship to God. So we fast from food to bring attention to our bodily desires and needs of nourishment, of water. And as a spiritual discipline, fasting, it can be used to sharpen those senses, to hear what God is trying to say without the noise of our wants and needs. So as God calls the people of Israel back to him in this passage from Joel, there's a call to fasting. It's a call to fasting, but it is followed by something. The purpose of that fasting is to sharpen the people's senses to the sin in which they've been living. The sin that has been wrecking their nation with invading armies and with desolation and with captivity. And as those senses sharpen, the sin becomes more apparent. Weeping and mourning are to follow, God commands. The thing is, fasting has the same effect on us. If you've ever visited a fancy coffee shop and you've looked at their beans, you'll see their name, but you'll notice something underneath there, which are the tasting notes of the coffee. And it varies from things that are maybe easy to identify or easier to identify in coffee, such as maybe a chocolate aftertaste, maybe some kind of nutty hazelnut aftertaste, all the way to the most ridiculous of dried mangoes or passion fruit. I honestly don't taste any of those. My senses are dull enough that when I drink coffee, it tastes like coffee. If there is milk in there, I can taste the milk. If there's half and half, I'll probably still taste coffee and milk. I can't differentiate those tastes. But as strange as it seems to me, I actually do believe that there are people who can taste the difference between different coffee varieties. Maybe they can even taste the hazelnut. Maybe they can even taste the dried mango that the tasting notes describe. But the reason for that is they have put into practice paying close attention to what they taste and how it tastes and how they describe it. When deciding what tasting notes to put on coffee, they don't pollute their mouth with any other foods, maybe a day or maybe even a few days before they go to taste. They cleanse their palate, they drink water, they drink mineral water to just cleanse that out so they can have a dozen different varieties of coffee in front of them and they can taste the differences between each one. They believe that their promise that they will be able to taste certain flavors is dependent on their abstaining from certain foods. That if they obey or believe the promise to give up certain foods, they can get something that otherwise they would not be able to get. Fasting, it follows very much the same principle. Fasting is surrendering the common things to get an uncommon experience. Fasting is giving up the things you freely have to get something that you have no control over. Fasting is taking the control that you have of what you put in your mouth and giving that up and saying, I won't do that, but I will believe in the promise that God will somehow speak to my mind, to my heart, to my soul. And it is an unpleasant journey to get there. The joy of fasting always feels like starving at first. Fasting may result in some good outcome, but it starts with the renunciation of something else. It starts with the casting off, the rejecting, the saying no to something else. Every choice that we make in our life can be thought of as a fast from something else. Choosing to wake up at noon means that you not only miss sunrise, but you miss breakfast. Choosing to marry one person actually doesn't result in saying no to another person. It results in saying no to thousands of other people. In making a choice, you make the choice for something else. Every choice we make in our lives is a renunciation, a rejection of something else. Every choice that we make in our lives implicitly requires a rejection of thousands of other choices. Whether it is choosing a career and rejecting others, choosing a person, rejecting others, choosing a life path and rejecting others. And fasting is a call for us to reject others. Other things, other joys, other promises, other things that we control. Fasting can be fasting from food, but fasting can be fasting from keeping up our appearance. Fasting can be fasting from materialism. Fasting can be fasting from indulgences. But the point of all of those things is to bring our attention back to God. There's something extra in your life. Something that is clouding your judgment, something that is putting noise out into the world, and you can't hear God speaking to you. And I encourage you this week, choose one thing that you will fast from. Choose one thing that you will reject so that God might speak into your life. And for the thousands of things that you might reject in the future, that He would give you the one thing that He promised. Peace, joy, and comfort as you go out into this unknown, in a world that we think we have control over, but in the end is all in God's hand. Go in peace and God bless. Amen.